Hello and welcome to the Big League Show. As always, I'm Connor Somerville with the shiny forehead, joined by Aiden Silliphant. And today, we're joined by somebody whose webcam has unfortunately broken and who probably has one of the best radio voices in our program, Mr. Matt Mallard. Matt, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us. We're really excited to dive into everything and just completely tear people apart today because this past week has not been the best for broadcasters in North America. But yeah, let's sort of start off with you and sort of your story. I want to start off, I'm going to start doing this thing for every episode because I'm interested to hear what people have to say. What is your first sports memory?
Whoa.
Yeah.
Like as a fan, like watching
Just
sports?
period.
Um, I guess my first sports memory, the first thing that comes to mind is I used to go out to the rink early on Saturday mornings with my dad and skate around. Just I loved skating. I loved playing hockey. So we used to go out to the free skates every morning and practice my skating and all that. In terms of a fan memory, I remember as far back as I can go, I remember going to watch Matt Sundin play for the Leafs against Buffalo. I don't remember what year it was, but I remember he was my idol growing up. I loved Matt Sundin. He's kind of what got me into hockey. And yeah, I went to see a game, Leafs against Buffalo in Buffalo. So yeah.
I think that's a lot of people's, at least especially East fans' first favorite
Mhm.
players. I know
Yeah.
it was mine.
Yeah.
I got a picture of him hanging above my bed. So I don't know if you're in the same boat as that, but
Oh yeah.
is that sort of where you've really fell in love with sports and sport media? Or was it something else that really drew you into the media side of sports?
Um, no, yeah. Well, as I said, I grew up playing hockey, and eventually most people, eventually reach that age where they come to realize, hey, probably not going to be doing this for a living, probably not going to make it to the NHL or, whatever respective sport it is, whether it's NBA, MLB. And once I realized that sport media was a program you could go into, and actually study it, get a university degree, I thought, hey, I want to be around sports as long as I can be. And as soon as I found out that was an opportunity for me, I went for it, dropped everything else I was doing, and just decided, hey, this is the path that I want to follow. And here I am 3-4 years later.
So what do you think kind of like drawed you over to like the whole media side of sports? Because sport media isn't just like you go into it just because you're a sports fan, but it's also like an entire other side that's just strictly media based. So what do you think kind of, caught your eye about that, and what influenced you to apply for the program, I guess?
I like to think of myself, I like to think of myself as a creative person. I was always into art, everything like that going through school. I always loved to be able to, create through my eyes, whether that's, visual art, just talking, writing. I loved writing. Anywhere where I can kind of sort of put my opinion out there for other people to see and, converse with others. And now having the opportunity to actually produce, behind the scenes and having that opportunity through RTA, the Mattamy Athletic Center, all of that sort of thing, having access to that room. So really for me, it was just the ability to produce content. I've always loved to do that. So that's probably the aspect that drew me towards the program.
And at what point did you sort of realize that? Was this something you sort of decided on when you were like 15, 14 sort of thing? Or was this sort of like a grade 12 decision? Let's just try to go for this.
Yeah. So going through the majority of grade 12 for myself, my mindset was I'm going to art school. That was, pretty much all but set in stone. I had created a portfolio. I had 6 out of my 8 classes were art classes in grade 12. So graduating, I didn't take a math in grade 12. I took an English and I don't even remember. I think I took a wood shop. So, and then 6 other art classes, right? So I had it was very different from most people. So I had applied to Sheridan, OCAD in Toronto, all of these art schools for a bunch, I'd looked at all these programs. And then I went to a university fair just, kind of for the hell of it. went through, saw Ryerson had their booth set up at my school, and my dad went to Ryerson, and he's like, hey, you should probably just check out the booklet. And it wasn't until that point, and I went through the booklet and I was like, hey, what the heck is this? And I asked about it, and they said, oh yeah, it's a pretty specialized program, just, for getting you introduced to the world of sport media, whether or not you have any experience. Doesn't really matter. They kind of told me, they said, tons of, different kinds of people show up here. And at that point, that was when I decided that I was totally going to drop the art school thing. Took an extra semester. I went back for an extra year in grade 13 to take extra courses. Had to take an extra course through the summer during the application process. And actually, when I got accepted, they called me and they said, hey, I think a couple days after my interview, they said, hey, we want to accept you. However, you're missing this class. We need you to take a class, and it needs to be done in like a month and a half, 2 months.
Oh my God.
So I took the class.
What class is it?
I needed another university level, university level grade 12 course.
Oh, okay,
so
okay.
I took a history of Canada from, I don't even know what it was, from first touch to North America to now.
Oh man.
So that was, a little bit of a long story, but that's how I got into the program.
That's actually crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
Good on you for doing that.
Yeah, thanks.
So I guess, first of all, I want to dive into your switch, because that's something we haven't really heard about in terms of people who've come on this show. We're 11 people in, so probably that's not that surprising. But what was that sort of second, extra semester like for you? And when you made this decision, what was the sort of feeling around you from family, friends, around deciding to go back for another half year, switching from something that it appeared as though you really wanted to do?
I guess, in my house, I know there's a bunch of households that are like this, but the idea is, hey, you want to get to university or college. I guess for my house, it was preferably university. And when I decided in late high school that, oh, maybe I want to go to college for art, something like that. It was kind of it was a big discussion, it wasn't necessarily like, hey, good for you. So then, feeling out that second or that extra semester in grade 13 was, I would say it was my best high school semester, because going through high school, I wasn't the best student. I'm not afraid to admit it. I was an art student. I was like, hey, I'll create some art here or there, get some marks for it. I don't need to study for biology or chemistry or physics or whatever. I didn't didn't do my homework. And then when that extra semester came around and I realized, hey, I need specific marks, I need a reference from a teacher. And outside of my art teachers, I didn't have any good connections with English teachers, math teachers, or whatever. So it was kind of difficult to switch to really getting down to doing homework and getting good marks, getting essays done and projects. So it was very difficult for me. But I don't know.
I'm curious as to what the 6 art classes were that you had to take, because I remember in grade 12 as well. I didn't take any sciences. I took one math class, but and then I took English, and then I took a television course, a communication technology course.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if my school even had 6 art classes. So I'm just curious as to what those classes were.
Yeah, so the high school I went to was Westdale in Hamilton. It's kind of an art school, I guess. Not an art school, but it's focused around that, and they have some IB program, which is International Baccalaureate. So it's those two things. Yeah. So if I can remember correctly, I took grade 11 photography and grade 12 photography in the same year. I took a standard art class. I think I took an art history. There was a portfolio specific course, which was, I took one photography class. There was a portfolio class, which was, building your art portfolio, all your artworks, and, how to present it, and how to, when you go for your interviews for art school. So that was a course that I took. So I'm thinking, hey, I'm going to have to do that. Right. And then I took a media arts. So, video editing, recording, all that sort of thing. But and then I took an English and wood shop, I think, were my other 2 classes.
And that's how you got into the construction job, I guess?
Yeah. So actually, no, that's just
No?
totally random.
Oh, okay.
Construction. Yeah. That was just when I quit my previous job, I found out through a family friend, hey, we have an opening here as I quit my previous job. And I said, hey, sign me up. And that was that. So I don't know.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Decisions.
That's really a different story than we've heard up until now. Let's dive a bit more into your sport media side, though, because this is obviously sort of trying to focus a bit more on sport media, as this is a sport show, and we're sport media students. So what was that sort of application process like for you? Obviously, you had to redo those courses, but apart from that, was there any sort of, did you find anything difficult? What was that sort of journey like for you?
The most difficult part for myself was getting into the mindset of actually thinking I had a shot of getting into the program, because finding out how many people apply every year, versus how many people actually get in out of those applicants was hard for me to kind of convince myself that I actually had a chance at getting into the program. Because like I said, my marks throughout my entire my time in high school weren't the best, in terms of academic classes. I wasn't an academic student, I was an art student. So being able to say, hey, yeah, my marks haven't been great. And then, going into an interview and, writing the essays that we had to, and saying, like these previous marks don't reflect the kind of student that I know I can be, the kind of, how I can apply myself to a program like this, how I'm driven, and then convincing myself, hey, just give it your best shot. Kind of trying to psych myself up into being able to walk into an interview, telling someone who I've never met, who's, an industry professional or a professor who could possibly be teaching me in a year's time, and then saying, hey, I can be here. I have stuff to give. I don't know anything about the sport media world. I don't know how to produce, never done radio. I've written a couple articles for school, right? But then outside of that, I don't have any experience. But still, I think you should let me into your program. It was difficult to convince myself that I actually had a chance, right? So that was the most difficult thing for me.
So what do you think, like, was that final, like, thing that got you into the program, I guess? Like, what did they like about you? Like, was it the interview that just completely was, like, blew them away and that's what got you accepted? Was it the essay that you wrote, in your opinion? What do you think kind of got you in?
I'd like to think it was a combination of both the essays and the interview, but if I had to choose one that I think kind of put me over, I would say it was the interview. My interviewer was Dan Berlin.
Okay.
So there were a couple of quick questions at the beginning, kind of asking about, school, what I have to give. And I basically told him, hey, like, I have no experience, but I want to learn. I'm here to learn. I'm not here to, go to pretend that I know things, right? Because I don't. Because, once you get into the room and you telling everyone you know something, and then comes time to do it and you can't do it, But I think he asked me 2 or 3 quick questions about, I don't even remember what it was, something to do with school. And then he asked me who my idol growing up was and why. And I said, Matt Sundin. And he told me why. And he sat back in his chair and he was like, that's interesting. I guess it was my reasoning for why he's my idol. I don't even remember what it was. And the interview changed from, what I thought it would be like to just a conversation with Dan. And yeah, so I'd say the interview, I guess. I don't know, but I'd like to think it was the interview. But
sounds like it, yeah.
Yeah.
Dan just heard his voice and immediately accepted him. I do remember in our first semester, I think you were in my class with Karen Sebesta.
Yep.
One of the first things she said to you was, you have like the best voice in this program. And being in that sort of class environment with you, it's really interesting to see you both as a host and as a director, because when you're directing, your voice is the only thing people hear. And that's very helpful in this program, obviously.
Thank you.
Let's get into that a bit. What has been sort of your favorite program at Ryerson, and what's sort of your experience been at the school?
My favorite class?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did I say program? I meant class.
Yeah, sorry, just making sure. Wow. It's been, I've had mostly love-hate relationship with the TV labs. I've enjoyed seeing every aspect of, what goes into a production. Being forced to go into roles that you're not necessarily comfortable with, I think is, awesome. It's great to have that exposure to everything and then understand, how every member of that production kind of, works with each other. Right. So knowing how, which members work specifically with others, like the director, who they're really focusing on talking with, and, audio, all that sort of thing. I love the TV labs. I really like sound production first semester. I think it was first semester I had it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was, I enjoyed that class a lot. Going into, radio. I've always had a little bit of a fascination with radio, so I enjoyed that a lot. But I'd say those two classes are the ones that stick out to me.
Yeah, I enjoyed sound production a lot, obviously, considering I want to get into podcasting, radio. I think Aiden also enjoyed it. But yeah,
It's okay.
it was,
I liked sound production was, it was so long ago. I don't really remember it too much, but like, I don't think it like blew me away, but yeah, it was like a good course. I think I had Max. No, I didn't have Max Cotter. No, I didn't.
I did.
I don't remember. I don't
did
remember,
as
so
well.
I can't really speak on it. I am a fan of podcasts. That's why I have 2 of them. So there you go.
There you go.
Let's dive into the stuff that you've done outside of Ryerson. Speaking of podcasts, with Aiden, I know that you started the KMN show with Kyle Cushman, who we had on recently, and Nigel as well, who I'm sure we'll have on in the future.
Mm-hmm.
What has that experience been like for you, and what has that sort of taught you about yourself in this sort of media environment, media landscape?
I've loved doing the show with those guys. Those are the 2 guys that I met when we had to split into our groups during our orientation. So I got paired with those 2. We started hanging out. We started talking and realized, hey, we're all Leafs fans, like a majority of the students here. We just kind of started talking. We found out about Spirit Live. We, I don't remember when we brought it up or who brought it up, but we said, hey, maybe we'll apply for a show. What's the name going to be? And just do KMN. And we talked about it. We talked about sports. It was fun to, kind of get that practice, get your creative practice hours, right? Because we need those. And then, just being able to go on, whether or not anyone's listening, but, just get that practice and, talk about what you love to talk about, and being able to have the access to the studio, like, an actual studio. I don't know. I mean, I've loved doing the show with those guys. It's been great exposure. We try to change it up every now and then, do different things, game shows, talk about news, just have fun with each other. And I mean, yeah, I don't know. I've loved doing it.
And where do you sort of see it going in the future? Because it's been pretty successful up until now, and I know you guys have continued it over the summer. Where do you plan on taking it? Will that be on Spirit Live? Will it be just outside of it, completely done by yourselves? What do you think you want to do with the show?
For me, I'm not sure right now. I've actually taken a step away from the show for a little bit. That was kind of a recent thing I decided to do, just kind of take a breath from it. We've been doing it for almost 2 years now, and, just kind of take a break. I don't want to tire myself out from it. I don't know whether or not I'll be going back yet. But I think it was important, for me to just kind of step back and say, hey, I love doing it with you guys. I love doing this show, but right now I don't have the drive to, do that continuously as much as we are. So just going to take a step back. But for the show, I think, Kyle has all, the statistics of where listeners are coming from. And I think he said we have, I think we have a couple listeners in Denmark or something like that, somewhere over in Europe. Yeah, he gets the statistics through SoundCloud Denmark or something. I don't know.
It's on Anchor probably.
I have no clue. You'd have to ask him. But we have listeners out there, and it's cool seeing, where people are coming from, and that we are having that, reach, as little as it is, but just to see where the people are listening from. It's kind of cool.
Probably some big Frederick Anderson fans too.
Probably, honestly, yeah.
Yeah, that is cool. And I know like they're doing like the whole KMN daily right now, like doing the after every single night of hockey. So that's cool that they're
Yeah,
doing.
they're doing a great job with that.
I find it, sorry not to cut you off, Aiden, but I find it interesting that you have taken a step back and sort of tried to protect yourself from the burnout, because that can be an issue in this industry. And
yeah.
what have you sort of learned from taking that break and about burnout itself?
As a person that gets tired of any sort of hobby relatively quickly, not saying that I got tired of that show quick. It's more of a recent thing, and just realizing, you know, the more I'm doing it now, it's kind of, you know, I'm not having the same personal enjoyment every episode, and it's nothing against them at all. Like I love recording with those guys. I love those guys. Been super close with them since, you know, my first week at the university. But just being able to realize and tell yourself, hey, you know, you're kind of losing the love you have for it. And step back, assess, realize, maybe try to figure out what it is, any reasons, whether it's personal or, you know, with the show itself, the structure of it. I'm not saying that's what it is, but, you know, just being able to assess that from your own view without, you know, talking about it with anyone else. I think it's good. And yeah, that was only recently. I think I had that conversation with them within the last week or so, week and a half. So it's pretty recent, but yeah.
Wow.
That's
Yeah,
really
I
interesting.
think that like it's obviously going to happen to all of us at some point. Like we need to take a break, especially now it's the summertime as well, right? And school is going to start up in a couple of weeks, and we're going to be doing this a lot more as well. Yeah. Hopefully you're back on the show though, because you're a good personality to have on the show.
Thank you.
Let's talk a little bit more about just like you and where. I know you said like you're not sure where the show is going to go, but what do you think in terms of just you in specific? Where would you like to see yourself go, like in the sport media industry? Would you want to stay radio based or on air or behind the scenes?
Personally, for myself, I love doing radio. I like writing. I don't do it as much now as I have in the past. Whether it's just personal writing or writing for, you know, a little site that we put together. I like writing anywhere that I can kind of, like I said earlier, share my opinion and be able to, you know, put my voice out there and say, hey, here's what I think. Whether that's on air, on radio, writing. That's sort of what my focus is on right now.
Oh, and let's dive into that, because we do have some stuff on here around the site you started, the Year 5 Collective. A little bit of background for people. You started the site with El Benaldi, Luke Burrows, Kyle Cushman, Ivan Ellis, Nigel Gubekshian, yeah. Drew Hardiman, Rain Hernandez, Simon Kiszczuk, Nicholas Robinson, Elizabeth Rosensen, and Patrick Talon, all of which are members of our year and our program. So what was that founding like, and how did it sort of come about for you and everyone in that group?
I remember there was a couple of us walking to, I think it was the RCC. I know Luke was there. There were a couple of us, but, you know, we had discussions about saying, hey, yeah, we all enjoy writing, whether or not it's for, you know, fan sites or, you know, any sort of site. We all enjoy writing about sports. And we kind of just discussed the possibility of putting together sort of a portfolio where we can put our personal works and showcase them, and maybe have, you know, people come read them and look at them, you know, just kind of put ourselves out there. And we decided that we were going to put together just essentially a portfolio website where we could put all of our content. And that's just what it turned out to be, a website. And that's all it is now. We haven't really touched that for a little bit. I'm sure it'll come back at some point, but yeah, it's really just, not everyone has access to write for a website or, you know, write for any sort of company or Twitter account or anything like that. So it was more of just an idea where we can write whatever we wanted, write our opinions, and post it whenever we'd like.
And what do you think is going to happen in this site? I know you mentioned you're not really sure, and you haven't used it for the while. When I looked at it yesterday while doing research for this, Ella was the last one to post an article back in February. And before that, she was the second last one to post it back in like November. What do you see happening with that site, and where do you sort of see it going?
I'd like to see it kind of kick back up again, as we talked about a couple minutes ago. I think that was just a burnout thing where everyone got so excited to, you know, holy cow, we have a website we can write it on. We created our own schedule. We said, hey, if you want to write about something, put it in, first come, first serve, essentially, on a topic. We had a schedule. We'd like to have an article go out, I think, for at least 4 days a week, I think is what we had set. So, but then we had it for as long as we did, and everyone was writing and writing and writing. And then everyone just kind of hit the burnout, right? So hopefully it comes back. I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. Luke did a really good job kind of, I don't know, I guess, you know, running it and, you know, kind of organizing everything. Rain did a great job with the social media and all of that. So I'd like to, like I said, I'd like to see it kind of have a little bit of a resurgence. It was just fun to, you know, be writing with your friends and everything. And, you know, maybe we add more people to it in the future and get, you know, expand that sort of writing group.
Yeah, I think I vaguely remember being reached out to join it as well back then, but that sort of didn't ever come of anything. Yeah, I think it's really interesting. You know, you're not the only person who started a site in our program. I think Ben Steiner started 49 Sports, which is really, really cool, and you should check out. But we'll also link all of his stuff down below. Your 5 Collective will be linked down there. I think you have 4 articles out.
Something like that, yeah.
When I looked, I might have been 5. I can't remember. But yeah, it's all really good stuff. It's all people from our year. It's all people we'll eventually, hopefully, have on the podcast. But yeah, our final sort of question is, what has been your biggest takeaway from getting into the sport media industry and that landscape? And what are 3 pieces of advice you have for somebody looking to get into it?
Ooh, that's a really good question. My biggest takeaway, I would say, is constantly encourage yourself to apply yourself, because it's easy to kind of get complacent with, you know, sometimes there's a light workload. Sometimes there's, you know, not a ton of projects going around, but you need to constantly, get yourself to keep putting out your best work, constantly show people that, you know, you're a hard worker. A good person is a big thing. I think you don't want to be making, I guess, enemies with anyone in a program as small as this one, right? I think there's less than 70 people now. You don't want to be, you know, on bad terms with anyone. You want to be able to show people that you can work with anyone. You want to be that kind of student that, you know, when you see your name come up in a group, they go, oh, that's exciting. I get to work with that person. I know they're a hard worker. I know, you know, you guys are definitely, you know, names that are, you know, when they come up, everyone, you know, nobody feels any negative thoughts towards that. You know what I mean?
Hopefully.
I can speak for myself, right? And just constantly motivating yourself to put out your best work and, you know, keep yourself going, because sometimes, like I said, there's light workloads and you can get caught in that sort of slow rhythm of, you know, not necessarily, I don't want to say caring, that's not the right word, but, you know, not necessarily pushing yourself as hard as you can.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice for people. I can't remember who says it. I think it's Joe. But one of his sayings is, be nice to everybody because you never know who your boss is going to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially in this industry. And
yeah,
I think trying to get people on this platform to sort of understand everybody else has really helped us and sort of helped us connect with everyone in this program, which is one of the goals, honestly, is to sort of meet everybody in sport media, because at times we can find that sort of tough, and it's also giving people a platform to tell their stories. And that's what I love to hear. I love stories when biographies are my thing. When I read, that's all I read. But yeah, I guess we'll wrap up this sort of conversation about you, and we'll dive into the insane world of sports that's happened over the last week, because a whole lot has happened, a lot of it negative, and there will be a lot of ripping, so get excited for that, and we'll be right back after this quick break. All right, let's dive into the world of sports and all of the fun stuff that's happened over the last week, which has felt like a month. We'll start off with the probably very little positive news that there is this week, and that is in soccer. I'm just going to talk for 30 seconds, and then we'll move on, because neither of these guys know soccer at all.
Correct.
Kick the bottle under my desk.
Correct. Yes.
Alphonso Davies. I'm sure you both have heard of that guy.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yes. Okay, good. At least you've heard of him, considering he's the best Canadian soccer player potentially to ever come out of Canada. He is obviously on Bayern Munich, and yesterday Bayern Munich beat Olympique Lyon 3-0. What does that mean? They're going to the Champions League final. He is the first male Canadian national team player, because there's a bit of an asterisk in a guy named Owen Hargreaves, who went to the Champions League final in 2008, but he didn't play for Canada. He played for England, because his dad was from England, and soccer rules, you're allowed to play for your dad, your family, your parents' nationality, or wherever they were born to, which is how Ayo Akinola, who plays for Toronto FC, is eligible for 3 different countries. But he's going to the Champions League final with Bayern, and that's huge for Canadian soccer. That's huge for Bayern. That's huge for him. He's had an incredible couple of years since moving there from Vancouver Whitecaps, and has fit in phenomenally in this sort of natural left fullback position. But that's all I'll say on him. I could talk about him forever. I'm sure I'll talk about him on my MLS podcast, MLS Multiplex podcast. You can find that Apple Podcast, Spotify, wherever, if you want my soccer takes, which are usually pretty cold or pretty hot.
Is the Champions League final like a 1-game thing, or is it like the 2 out of 3 thing that they normally do?
One game.
1 game.
One game,
right.
Sunday, 3:00 kickoff, Eastern.
Jeez,
I might watch that.
I was going to say I could watch it, but I have work, so I'm not going to watch it.
It's also on DAZN, which is an issue.
Oh.
But I'm not going to say anything about how I watch it.
Yeah.
Incriminate yourself.
Yeah. It's great for soccer. It's great for Canada. There's not really much I need to say for it. It's balancing out the terrible stuff that's happened to the CFL over the last week, as they've been denied a loan from the federal government and have canceled their season. If you haven't been following that situation, basically due to the COVID pandemic, and they're not able to play games. And that's a big issue when a lot of your revenue is driven by the gate and how much money you can bring in via tickets. And they just couldn't do it this year. So they had to cancel their season. It's a huge loss for them. It's the first time since before the I think it was just before the Second World War, they haven't rewarded a Grey Cup. It's been forever, over 100 years, which is really unfortunate. And unfortunately, that's just what happens and what has to happen this year. I believe they're going to lose around $50 to $80 million due to the canceled season. So for a league where they aren't always in the best financial positions, especially the teams, that's a pretty big hit. And hopefully they come out of it, but there really isn't any guarantees. Do you guys have any thoughts on what's happened with the CFL and that whole situation?
I think, not really. It's just unfortunate because there's so many CFL fans across Canada, and I'm sure that they're extremely disappointed. And then, obviously the players, it's extremely disappointing because that was their livelihood. And for all the players who don't make the NFL, they try and go to the CFL and do something. And unfortunately, there won't be a season this year. So it sucks on them. It sucks on for their families. Do I think that the CFL will continue? I would hope so. I know they have been struggling financially the last couple of seasons as well. I think, TSN is obviously a big promoter of CFL, and they are a big part of why it's still in existence today. I honestly can't really say if they will come back from it right now, but I would hope so, because if they don't, like, it's all that history down the drain, I guess, and it's just going to be disappointing. And yeah, over 100 years, and I don't think people really thought it would even last that long, but it has. So hopefully it can continue someday.
I think it's tough for anyone who has hopes of the NFL possibly making its way to Canada. Like, if Canada doesn't want to support their own league, right? It doesn't really show much interest from Canada as a country in saying, hey, we want to support this sport, and so I don't know.
Yeah, it's just an unfortunate situation, which I wish didn't happen. I would think we all wish wouldn't happen. If an ideal world, we wouldn't be going through a global pandemic right now, but it's just the cards we've been dealt. We got to deal with it, and that's what the CFL is trying to do. Maybe CFL comes back next year. I hope it does. It does provide a lot of opportunities for young football players and guys who didn't necessarily get their chance in the NFL, but who knows? Let's move on to baseball, because baseball is doing baseball things. We will talk about the Tatis Jr. situation in a second. Let's first talk about the Jays and what's happening there. Bo Bichette, he has been injured. He has a grade 1 LCL strain, which is not a good thing, but with rest, it should heal. So that's always a good sign. Today, Nate Pearson was thrown on the IL. I think it was the 10-day IL with elbow tightness. So another not a very good.
Let's hope it's nothing. Let's just hope it's just elbow tightness and it's nothing more than that.
Yeah, but in a season where every game means just so much more than it does in a normal season, missing those two guys for an extended period of time is going to be tough for the Jays. But hopefully they rebound. I don't know. They just swept the Orioles, so that's a good thing. Yeah. And even though it's the Orioles and they suck, so I don't know how much you can really take away from that series. But the
Randall
Jays
Randall Grichuk.
Been
the one guy that I'm not a big fan of on the Jays. I think he's gotten like 5 home runs in 4 games or something. And
not a fan of him?
I'm not a fan of Randall Grichuk. I'm not a fan of, well, I don't like the contract. Like, okay. I think he's making like $54 million in total. Like, that's a lot of money for a guy who, in my opinion, is like borderline a starting center fielder. Like, I know that's a lot to say right now just because he's doing so well, but at the time when the Jays first acquired him, he wasn't known as an established MLB starter. And, in his first season, numbers weren't great, strikes out a lot, doesn't really get on base too much. So I just didn't think he was worth the money at that time, especially. But if he can continue what he's doing right now, then I'm going to be more than happy with him. But I don't think he's going to keep this up. I hope I'm wrong, but it's going to be really hard to keep it up. And the one thing with Grichuk is consistency. So let's see if he can, stay consistent.
Yeah, that'll be an issue. I think it was also people's opinions of him were sort of turnered by the fact that he was replacing Kevin Pillar, and everyone loved Kevin Pillar, but True. That's neither here nor there. I
wasn't a fan of Kevin Pillar either, though.
Wow.
Yeah. You just can't please this guy. Any center fielder you're ever going to bring in, he's going to hate.
Yeah.
What was the last center fielder you liked on the Jays?
The last center fielder I liked on the Jays, I liked Vernon Wells was pretty good. I didn't even mind like a guy like Anthony Ghost, who was like a bench player. Like, he was okay. Anthony Alford, right now, he's on the Jays. I think he's very underestimated. So I hope they give him a good shot to be that starting outfielder at least. If he's not in the center, then just put him in the outfield and see what he can do. But for some reason I just didn't like Pillar, and like Pillar is phenomenal defensively. I loved him for that. Just the bat. Same with Grichuk. Strikes out a lot, can't get on base. So, yeah.
All right. let's dive into the fun part of baseball, and that is the unwritten rules, because just MLB. If you're not familiar with what happened or you weren't following the situation because you don't follow the MLB, first of all, I don't blame you.
Jeez.
Second of all, this is the reason I don't blame you. Basically, Fernando Tatis Jr. Plays for the San Diego Padres. They were playing the Texas Rangers, so already a good start when you mentioned the Texas Rangers. And it was, I believe, the 7th inning, bases loaded, 3 balls, no strikes, Tatis Jr. at the plate. The third base coach signals at him to not swing.
Keep in mind, this is like a blowout game too.
Yeah.
It was close at this point. It was like 7-4.
I thought it was
Sure?
7-3.
Or 7-3.
I thought it was like 7-0.
Well, maybe I
No.
was wrong.
No, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
I thought it was a relatively close game. And either way, if it's 7-4, 7-3, they're still within striking distance, especially with what you've seen happen in baseball before. So I can't remember who exactly was pitching. It was, I have it in my notes here.
Woodward.
Woodward. No, that's the manager.
Oh, that's the manager. Oh, yeah.
I didn't even put the name of the pitcher, so that's
Let me take
on
a
me.
look.
Basically, the Texas pitcher threw a 92-mile-per-hour fastball right down the middle of the plate, and Tatis Jr. just absolutely demolished it and hit a grand slam, which the Texas Rangers manager, Chris Woodward, was not a fan of. So the very next batter is Manny Machado, and Woodward tells his pitcher to throw behind Machado because he didn't like what Tatis Jr. just did. And then sparked the debate. After the game, the Rangers manager said that there's unwritten rules in baseball and he has no issue, or he has an issue with what Tatis did. Tatis was told, as I mentioned, by the third base coach, not to swing, but he did. And then his own manager said he needs to learn from his mistake. What do you guys think of this situation? Because people got rightfully pissed. The pitcher of the Rangers was suspended 3 games. The Texas Rangers manager, Chris Woodward, was suspended a game. What do you think of this entire situation? Who's in the wrong? Do you have an issue with any of it?
So I looked at the score. It was 10-3 at the time. It was a 7-run difference. So I think, so my take on it, and like if I'm Tatis Jr., right, it's a 10-3 game. You got bases loaded. First of all, you have to take in, like, this guy is maybe the best player in baseball right now. And he is, I think he's first in home runs, first in RBIs, first in stolen bases. So stats kind of mean something to him. But it is a 3-0 count and it is a blowout game. He says that he missed his sign. He said that he didn't see the sign of the third base coach. I think out of respect in that game, you just take the pitch. Like,
I agree.
Plain and simple, you take the pitch. However, like, I don't see why the Rangers are really complaining, because I don't think you can argue that, like it's a 3-0 count. Yeah, I know it's a 3-0 count, and you normally shouldn't swing at a 3-0 pitch. But, like, it's still a game. Like, you're still trying to win the game. And, like, first of all, maybe you shouldn't get yourself into a 3-0 count position. Like, that's bad. You're 1 pitch away from walking him. And there isn't a written rule in baseball that says you have to take a 3-0 pitch. Like, you're competing against another team. You want to try and add to the lead, whatever. Like, I don't agree with Tatis for swinging at it, but I also disagree with the Rangers for complaining about it. So yeah, that's my take on it.
I mean, I think it's just a moral thing, right? Like, what inning was this in? When this
8th
happened?
inning.
Eighth inning.
Oh, I thought
Yeah.
it was 7th. Okay.
I have no clue.
It was
I
the
think it's
8th
just
inning, yeah.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to morals of the player. I mean, you know, what it tells you about Tatis is, he doesn't care. Pad your stats. Sure, there are players like that in every sport, right? So, I mean, if you want to take heat out on him, go for it. But at the end of the day, that's his decision, right?
Yeah, I had no issue with it personally. I thought he should have hit the home run. I don't know why there's an unwritten rule in baseball that you allow the pitcher to get away with a free pitch when you're
Right.
down 3-0, or when they're down 3-0 at bat. So he has every right to hit that home run.
Definitely.
Sorry, they're unwritten rules for a reason, right? I mean, they're not rules. They're just, things you follow. If you want to follow them, go for it. You know what's going to happen if you he knows the consequences, right?
Yeah, I think he would know the consequence because, like, in his head, it's a 3-0 pitch. He's obviously going through what he's going to do. Am I going to swing? Am I going to take it?
Mm-hmm.
And then once he comes to the conclusion that, okay, I'm going to try and, crush this baseball. It's going to be a fastball right down the middle of the plate. I'm going to hit it. He's obviously knowing that, okay, somebody's going to be mad about this. Well, after I hit this ball, somebody's going to be really mad at me. So I don't agree with what he did there. Like, he should have been, out of respect, just taken the pitch and hit a home run on the 3-1 count, because it's going to be another fastball probably. But yeah, I don't know. I blame Tatis, and I also blame the Rangers for arguing, because I don't really think they should be arguing too much. And then also, like, you're going to throw behind Machado? Like, really? You're that upset? I don't get it.
It's very childish, I guess.
Typical Texas Rangers.
I wasn't going to say it, but yes, typical Texas Rangers.
Yeah.
I don't really know if we will have anything else to add to this situation other than the fact that I think it's stupid. Matt and Aiden sort of understand it. I'm not a baseball guy, so that makes sense.
Me neither.
I think we do need to talk about this, and we'll wrap up on it before we jump into the basketball stuff after the little break, and hockey as well. Final baseball happened last night. Reds announcer, play-by-play guy named Thom Brenneman, didn't know his mic was hot, coming out of a commercial break, used the homophobic F word. Not going to repeat it on this broadcast because it's terrible. And it's so bad that I don't really know what to say. Like, one thing that you're supposed to know when you're on air is always assume the mic is hot. Always assume that you're on air. And obviously he didn't do that. And that's incredibly bad. And what he said was even worse, but it's just really unfortunate what happened. And he's been suspended for saying the slur, and he apologized on the broadcast. But during his apology, I think it was the Reds hit a home run. So he, mid-apology, started doing play-by-play, which is just not good. I have no respect for him. I believe he should be fired. I don't know where you guys sort of stand on this issue. I'm going to assume it's in a pretty similar spot as me. But yeah, we just sort of have to wait for things to continue to come out. And yeah, do you guys have anything to add to what I've said?
I mean, like you said, him midway through his apology, kind of just stopping to, call the game because they hit a home run. I think they made it 4-0. Doesn't matter. Obviously not taking into account the severity of his actions, right? Not thinking that, the apology needs to be finished before, he goes back to calling the game. But Ryan Sykes, one of our profs, I think nailed it on Twitter, talking about, this isn't just a, once in a blue moon sort of issue that just happened to be caught. I've never been in a truck. I've never been in a room, during a live broadcast for, a professional sports game. But Ryan Sykes talking about how, this isn't a one-time thing. This happens all the time. It needs to be talked about. It needs to be, handled. It needs to be, taught that this is not, this isn't right. This isn't this is, wrong on so many levels. And yeah, I think it's gross. Like you said, I agree. It should be fired. It's taken this long. That just, shows how big of an issue it is, that this isn't something that, happens and people deal with it instantly. It's okay, let's look at it. Let's just suspend them first, and then let's look at it, instead of just taking actions right away and saying, we don't condone this sort of behavior at all. Get rid of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And as someone who has LGBT members of this family, it's just shocking, or like members of my family. And I have friends who I went to high school with who are, and it's just shocking. We'll end on Ryan's tweet, unless Aiden, you have something you want to say before we finish.
No, I just agree with you guys.
Okay, well, we'll end on Ryan's tweet. I know Richard Coffey as well, who's another person in this program, put out a pretty good tweet as well. But Ryan said, I'm not RT the clip of the commentator because it is beyond disappointing. But if you really want to change the culture in sports broadcasting, here's an idea. Record the truck intercom and hold producers responsible. This blank happens way more often than people think. Don't let the fact that just because Fox came back from commercial too soon and he got caught distract you from the idea that this was some sort of one-time slip-up. Dudes like this have been doing this blank for years. Be real. How about just setting a goddamn standard in sports that this blank is unacceptable? Enough is enough. We'll be back after this break. All right. So after that sort of conversation about one commentator, let's move on to another commentator who hasn't had the best week, I guess is putting it pretty nicely. Jack Edwards, the Boston Bruins NESN play-by-play host, put out a tweet this week after a Zdeno Chara, Evgeny Svechnikov sort of battle in front of the net where Chara pushed Svechnikov and he fell awkwardly. And Edwards said this: what NBC hasn't shown yet regarding the unfortunate injury to Svechnikov, the Carolina wing playing hobby horse, riding Chara on the back apron of the goal. You poke the bear, you take your chances. No one wanted to see Svechnikov hurt, but he bit off more than he could chew. Issue with this statement number one, Svechnikov was not the Carolina Hurricanes player fighting with Chara behind the net. Issue number two, he basically just praised the fact that Svechnikov got injured and said he deserved it because he bit off more than he could chew. And number three, he's just a terrible person. I don't know that. I just think his hockey takes and his bias are unmatched in hockey.
Yeah.
What did you guys sort of think about this entire situation? Do you think he was correct in this statement? Where do you sort of fall on that?
I mean, I think you said it pretty well, Connor. Like, there's like the 3 points to it that he got wrong and he made a mistake. He really did make a mistake, but do you really expect anything less from Jack Edwards? Like, first of all, I guess as a commentator, you're not really supposed to show bias towards a team, but I think throughout his commentating career, he's really shown a lot of bias towards the Bruins. And, even like, I know during the playoffs against the Leafs, he's made some big comments, praising the Bruins and not talking well about the Leafs. Yeah, I don't know. It's just stupid, and I don't know why he even put out the tweet. Like, do you really need to make that public? Like, even if you have an opinion on it, like, why even put that out? Like, it's kind of similar to what Tatis was thinking. It's like, you're going to be getting some backlash for if you do this. And yeah, I don't know. It's just typical Edwards, I guess.
Yeah, to me, Edwards just totally embodies what a lot of people think Boston hockey is, right? Just that super physical, hard hitting, in some aspects, dirty hockey, right? And I mean, you can't really encourage that sort of play. And you guys both said it, right? Like, it's wrong. You said it, Aiden. He had to have known the consequences. And I just think, looking at a play like that where a player gets hurt and then praising the player that hurt Svechnikov, right? This being Chara. I mean, he does it all the time though. So not surprised at all.
Yeah, it really isn't surprising. He's the embodiment of a homer. And, The Leafs have that in Joe Bowen, but Jack Edwards is just on another level. Like you think back to, this isn't the first time he said a player has deserved to get injured. I think he said the same thing when Roman Polak got hurt.
Yeah.
Good karma.
Yeah. So it just not a good week for Boston sports commentators, which we're not going to get into the Mike Milbury stuff because I think we talked about that last week. But it will obviously come up in this next discussion because Tuukka Rask has opted out of playing for the Boston Bruins. He has left the bubble to be with his family. There was a little bit of confusion when it initially happened. It was sort of surprise about why he would do this, why it would come now. And Boston fans were not exactly pleased, to say the least. So let's just sort of get into it a little bit. Rask left the bubble pretty suddenly after his wife called him saying that his daughter had some sort of medical issue situation. So he basically called or texted one of his contacts with the Bruins. I can't remember exactly who it was. And then got on the first flight to Boston to be with his family. And that's sort of where it ends. I'm just disappointed in Boston fans and some of the people's handling of this entire situation. I mentioned Mike Milbury. He's one of them. I think it's been incredibly unfair how they've insulted him and said that he wasn't willing to play for the team when ultimately family comes over hockey right now, and it obviously comes over hockey for him. It's not the situation for everybody, but it's family, and I don't blame him one bit for leaving. I think it's embarrassing that you are mad at him. I get being disappointed. I get being a little frustrated, but the fact that you're genuinely mad at him, I think is just embarrassing. And you really need to wake up and understand that this is bigger than hockey. For him, it's bigger. Like, he owes you nothing. Yes, the team is paying his salary, but if they allow him to leave, he can leave. And he did. So far, Yaroslav Halak has been good. So I don't really see why you're that disappointed, especially with that sort of group, I guess, of Boston fans who just completely despise him for some reason, which I can never really figure out. But yeah, that entire situation has just been pretty brutal and pretty unfortunate. What do you guys sort of think about Rask leaving after I give my opinion? Are you of the same opinion of me, or do you think that he should have stuck around?
I think it just shows how toxic hockey Twitter can be, has been forever, right? How people just quickly jump on a player, with no explanation. Everyone looks to jump on a player whenever they can. There are people on Twitter that do that, not even in just hockey.
I think, people didn't really look into the situation too much. They just saw the report that he, has opted out and started, going on Twitter and tweeting about it. But, there's a lot of background behind it. You have to open your eyes and realize that, like Connor said, this is more than hockey and there's a global pandemic going around. So, yeah, I don't understand the fans for being like mad at him and talking bad about Tuukka Rask for doing this. Like, if anything, he's, the best person in the world for opting out of, what he plays for. He plays for the Stanley Cup, but, he's realizing that, no, my family's more important right now. So if anything, he's, a really good person for doing this and being there to support his family.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. Like, it's just showing he's a good dad. And he is a dad. He wants to go home and be with his kids when they may be struggling. He wants to be with his wife when or a girlfriend, I'm not sure if he's married, when they're going through this situation. And I completely understand it. As someone who's had medical issues in the past, I understand wanting to be with your family, and I don't blame him one bit. I think he has every right to do what he wants, and he has every right to opt out. So yeah, stop talking crap about him on Twitter, you idiots. Even though I know no Boston fans are listening to this podcast. Yeah, I don't know. I guess there's not really much to add to that sort of situation. As I mentioned, Yaroslav Halak has been playing very well. So Boston fans should be pretty happy. They just eliminated the Carolina Hurricanes, and I had them going to the Cup final. I thought they were really, really good. It's just goaltending, as much as it pains me as a James Reimer diehard fan.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of let them down in that fourth game, but it is what it is. Reimer blowing a 2-goal lead or 3-goal lead against the Bruins in Toronto. It's not the first time it's happened. But yeah, what did you guys think about that entire series, and what went wrong for the Carolina Hurricanes?
What went wrong? I think they just didn't capitalize on enough chances. Like, they were getting chances on Halak or Rask, and they just weren't putting it in the net. And, I think, they came off a sweep in the qualifying round, and they got so much momentum going for them. And I think maybe they entered the series a little bit too on a high, I guess, too cocky potentially, knowing that also Boston finished in fourth in the round robin seeding. And they're missing, or they had Pasta, but he's been dealing with some issues with unfit to play. And even Tuukka Rask was dealing with that stuff too. So I think, Carolina was just kind of a bit over their heads, and they weren't taking it as seriously, I guess. Also, like Svechnikov, that's a big loss, him being out and him not being able to finish the series. I think, the big guys in Aho and Teravainen, they looked okay in the first couple of games, but after that, they kind of died off. And then also, just the goaltending, Reimer and Mrazek, like they played okay, but when it came down to, the important moments of the game, they just crumbled. And then ultimately, I think it's just the experience of the Bruins that won them the series in the end. And, Carolina is a good team, but they're also still very young, and it is tough to beat a team like the Bruins, who are established, and especially in the playoffs, they play a playoff style game. So yeah, it's tough, but I think the future is still looking very bright for the Hurricanes.
Yeah. For me, I think it says more about the I think it says more about the Boston Bruins than it does about Carolina. How those veterans are able to get up, for a series after losing all the play-in games. It shows the maturity of the Bruins, how strong they are depth-wise. Bergeron, Marchand, with Pastrnak being out, being able to overcome after, your star goaltender walks away from your team without an explanation at first. Right now we know. But yeah, coached well by Bruce Cassidy, who's one of the best coaches in the NHL, in my opinion. And for Carolina, I think, Connor hit it on the head. Goaltending, just, they don't have strong goaltending. I love James Reimer too, myself. But when it comes down to it, the Bruins were able to get up and, get back on the horse after kind of knocking themselves off during the preliminary series or the preliminary rounds. But that just, speaks to, how mature the Bruins are.
Yeah, and I want to know, what are your off-season moves for the Carolina Hurricanes? What do you think they need to do?
Yeah, goaltending.
Goalie, yeah, get a goalie.
I think it's as plain as it sounds. It's just goaltending. Like Mrazek, he's all right. Reimer, he's a good backup, but Mrazek's not a bona fide starter. There are goalies you can acquire out there. I mean, you look at Columbus now; they got 2 hot goaltenders on their hand, with Seattle coming into the league in 1 year from now. Demko probably needing to move from Vancouver. And I'm not saying he's a bona fide starter, but there are goaltenders. There are teams with 2 goaltenders on their hands, and they just need to look for the right move.
Brian Elliott, Philadelphia as well. If Carter Hart takes the reins there, then he could be a trade guy. I think, their defensive core is set. Like, they have a solid 1 through 7. That's not the problem at all. Forwards are looking good. I think maybe you could add a little bit more depth, I guess, at forward. Maybe trading a defenseman for a forward, Jacob Slavin for William Nylander. Just throwing it out there. And just goalie. Get a goalie. Get a bona fide starter, because right now I think they have number 2 goalies, and they just need to get that number 1.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think Robin Lehner or Braden Holtby, like one of those big free agent fish, even Jacob Markstrom, would be an option for them? Or do you think that that's sort of out of their price range right now?
I don't think Vancouver ever in their days lets go of Jacob Markstrom. I don't think that's a possibility at all. But I think you raised a good point in Robin Lehner, right? Whether or not Vegas holds on to him. They still have Fleury as well. So you could imagine one of those two goaltenders is going to be available. But that's the one thing that Carolina has to target and run down this offseason if they're going to legitimately have a chance to become, a playoff contender.
Yeah. Another goalie they could potentially look at if he doesn't re-sign with his team is Corey Crawford. He's going into free agency. And I believe, and after the Chicago Blackhawks were eliminated, maybe he looks to move on. That core might be done. Taves and Kane were the last two off the ice. And they didn't look very happy, obviously. What did you guys think of that entire series? How do you think Chicago did?
I thought Chicago was going to win that series. I had them winning the series in my bracket. Honestly, like, some of the games were pretty close. Like, even in this last game, like, if you're just watching, like, the last 30 seconds of it, like, Chicago was pushing hard. Like, they fought to the last second, and they came into this series with a big win against the Oilers too. So really anything can happen. But ultimately, I think it did come down to Robin Lehner and also Marc-Andre Fleury. The game that he came in, he looked great. I think, like, Chicago has pieces, but they're still very young, and I think they're the youngest team that was left in this tournament. Do I think that the Taves and Kane era is done? Maybe not. Like, I think if they add, well, they would have to get another goalie if Crawford does leave. And I still think that, Crawford really isn't what he used to be. And especially in the regular season, he didn't look too good. But if they can add some pieces on defense and also add to their forward depth, their young core, they also have, I think, who's their young prospect?
Is it Kirby Dach?
Kirby Dach.
If he takes a step up, like he has shown strides in the last couple of years, so he can still keep growing. And then Boquist as well. I think he's potentially a top 4 guy. So I think if they get a bit more experience, then I wouldn't count them out for winning a cup while they still have Taves and Kane.
Yeah, they're in a weird spot. Like, they have this sort of aging core that are still good. You look at the Duncan Keiths, you look at the Jonathan Taves, you look at the Patrick Kanes. They still got that pretty solid core, but they also have the Kirby Dachs. They have the Alex Nylanders.
Alex DeBrincat,
Dylan Strome. Kubalik. I think his first name is Brett, correct?
Yeah.
Brett Kubalik. Dominic. Where did I get Brett?
Yeah.
Brett Kubalik. Brett.
Yeah.
Brett.
I don't know.
Dominic Kubalik, who I believe is going to be an RFA this offseason.
I think so.
I think the same thing with Dylan Strome as well.
Mm.
He might be entering free agency as well, if not this year, next year. So they're in a really interesting spot, and I don't know what they're going to do. It's weird. Like, do you trade Kane and Taves? Do you try to? Can you?
I don't think you can trade.
Yeah,
I think Patrick Kane is a Blackhawk for life.
Same with Taves, I think.
Yeah, I mean, after what they've done, unless they, approach management and say, "Hey, we want another kick at the can somewhere else." I don't think they're going to get that while they're still in Chicago. But like you said, I think it was Aiden. They're a young team. Kirby Dach looks super promising. He looks extremely good. Patrick Kane is still playing fantastic. He had 84 points in 70 games. Kubalik, DeBrincat, like Saad's still 27. He's pretty good, but their defense is old. But again, they have young prospects and players like Boquist, right? So, and
they have Ian Mitchell as well, a Canadian guy who can come up and maybe be an impact next year.
Yep, they're going to be they're hard pressed when it comes to goaltending, but I don't think we've seen the end of Chicago in terms of being competitive.
Yeah, I think that's fair. They will have to definitely do a retool, but we'll see what they end up doing. Who knows? Let's move on to another team that has a C in its name in the Arizona Coyotes, who have a big free agent coming up. Taylor Hall, who they acquired from the New Jersey Devils at the trade deadline. What did you think of the Coyotes, and how good are Colorado?
I mean, that's a series where I don't think Arizona had a chance. I mean, that wasn't close for me. I mean, they're young, and they have a lot of talent up front. They got Ekman Larson on defense. They're a fast team, but I don't think they're in any ways a contender to me. I'm not big on Taylor Hall either. I've spoken about that before. I don't think he's, the kind of player that a lot of people make him out to be. I think, he's a very highly offensive player, but I think his Hart Trophy season was a flash in the pan.
Mm-hmm.
If you want a hot take, that's mine. But yeah,
you are not the only person of that opinion, and I will leave it at that. Not naming any names.
Yeah, I think I agree with Matt. Like, Arizona's just not there yet. Like, they're still waiting on a ton of their prospects to get here. And then, I know they added in Kessel, hoping he could do something, but he didn't look too good in the playoffs either. And then, who knows what they're going to do with Taylor Hall. I agree with Matt. Like, I don't think he is that same player that he was back when he won the Hart Trophy. And he's probably going to get overpaid, though. One team is probably going to pay him a lot of money to join the team. Darcy Kemper was their MVP this year, and they found something in him. So, sign him to a long-term deal, keep him around, build around him. They got Ekman Larson still. There is somewhat of a core there. I think they're just still young, right? And they just got to keep growing together. And, Clayton Keller's obviously got a ton of potential. They were missing Nick Schmaltz as well in the playoffs, so that's a big loss. They're still waiting on Barrett Hayton to get here. So, yeah, they got potential, but they're just not there yet.
I think Barrett Hayton played last night, if I remember correctly. I believe he came into the lineup for them. So that is a young, promising piece. Darcy Kemper is just insane. He's potentially the best goalie of the past 2 years. Like, his numbers are insane. So they have a really good player in him, but they're going to have to take a serious look in the mirror, especially after John Chayka just up and left. So they're in an interesting spot, similar to Chicago. Let's talk about the playoff game last night. Montreal against Philadelphia. Montreal is on the brink of elimination, down 3-1 going into this game. They end up winning it 3-2. However, there were some fireworks. Sean Couturier hit on Arturi Lehkonen, as well as the Brendan Gallagher, Matt Niskanen situation, which I think we're going to get into a little bit more, because that situation is interesting, because Matt Niskanen is now having a hearing with the NHL over it. If you missed it, Niskanen and Gallagher were sort of in the corner. Gallagher fell and was sitting against the boards, and Niskanen turned around and basically just cross-checked him in the face. I believe he fractured a bone in his face, I think Montreal said. That might not be correct. They may have just claimed
fractured jaw.
Yeah,
that's what I read.
Fractured jaw is brutal. And he got cut pretty bad. If you look at what he looked like afterwards,
he lost a tooth.
He lost a tooth at least. So what did you guys think of that situation? And do you think Matt Niskanen should be suspended or fined for the cross-check?
Yes. I mean, as a Leafs fan who's seen this kind of play before in the playoffs, Kadri gets suspended 11 times out of 10, right? Every time he gets suspended for that play. And the inconsistency with officiating in the NHL is atrocious, especially when it comes to playoff hockey. The rule book for some refs just gets thrown out the window. And it's, they need to fix that. That's one of the biggest things for me the NHL needs to fix.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he should be suspended as well. Looking at it live, didn't think too much of it. Like, definitely should be a penalty, but I wasn't thinking suspension at first. But then, yeah, if you look at the replay, like, I don't think he like actually hit his face with his stick, but like it was close. Um, and yeah, it should be suspension. Like, you shouldn't even be trying to do that. And then also, like, the puck is gone. Like, there's no need to do that. And so, yeah, it is suspension worthy. And I think, Niskanen has had some history as well. I don't know if he's gotten suspended, but I think he's gotten a couple fines earlier this year as well. So I think he does deserve at least a game for this one. And, it's Matt Niskanen. It's not going to be a big loss for the Flyers.
That is a shot at Matt Niskanen. I think he did connect with his face based on the outcome and how he looked afterwards. Yeah. There's a really good shot from the Montreal Canadiens social team in the corner that it happened, sort of behind Gallagher. You could really see Niskanen just absolutely drill him. They posted it on Twitter. I'm not sure if they posted it on Instagram. I don't follow their account personally. But it didn't look pretty at all, to say the least. But yeah,
he did connect with his face. My bad.
He smoked him.
Yeah,
that is definitely one way of putting it. It was not a gentle tap. We can leave it at that. Let's sort of wrap up this section of the podcast before we get into the Leafs, and then sort of wrap up the entire thing. Dale Hawerchuk. Probably one of the greatest players of all time. He played in the 80s and the 90s, played with the Jets, the Blues, Philadelphia, and Buffalo. Scored over 1,400 points, played over 1,100 games. In the playoffs, he was just as good. He'd been battling cancer for a while, and I believe it sort of came back. I can't remember if it was, like last July, and it's just really
last July. Last July.
It was either this July or last July. I can't remember which. It was a July. We should probably have that correct. But it was just sad. Like, it's somebody who a lot of people are very close with. I know Wayne Gretzky was. Rick Bowness, the coach of the Dallas Stars, was emotional while they were doing the tribute before his game. It was just sad. And he was a member of the hockey community we were losing too early to cancer. And unfortunately, this disease it's just very difficult to stop in certain cases. And I don't know, I don't really know what to say. It's taking a life too early, and someone who a lot of people looked up to, and just who happened to be one of the best hockey players probably of all time. I'd say maybe other than Teemu Selanne, the greatest Winnipeg Jet of all time. I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but just really unfortunate. He won a Calder Trophy too. I didn't mention that, but do you guys have any sort of thoughts on Dale Hawerchuk, his life, his playing career, anything along those lines?
I don't know too much about his life, but in terms of playing career, I think, he got overshadowed by, playing in the same era as Gretzky, right? I mean, this guy put up 1,400 points in just under 1,200 games. Like, that's insane. It's the scoring era, but still, if they're playing in the same division as the Oilers, right, and the Flames at the time, those are very strong teams from that era. And I think if it's not for Gretzky, this guy maybe has, a few more trophies to his name.
Yeah, I agree with Matt there. Like, he would probably win at least a cup, if it wasn't for Gretzky. And I don't really know too much about his playing career or his life, but I've heard he's a phenomenal player and a better person. And I know that, I was watching the Sportsnet tributes and stuff, and, I think it was, man, I don't even know who was doing the feature that they did on him, but I think it was Stephen Brunt. Stephen Brunt did it. and they were saying that in like that Canada Cup game, like he was the guy who won that face-off to set up the Mario Lemieux goal. So like just small things like that he was kind of, maybe not the biggest, like he wasn't like the most popular, or like just underlying moments that made him so good that nobody really talks about. And then, yeah, obviously you see Rick Bowness on the bench tearing up, and that was really emotional. So he obviously impacted a lot of people's lives. So it's tough to lose him.
Yeah, it's just sad overall, and our thoughts are all with the Howard family. We know how difficult this must be, but yeah, 57 is way too early to go. So thoughts with the Howard Chucks, and we'll talk more Leafs and get a bit more upbeat after this quick break. All right, and we're back. We got to do this a little quickly because we didn't realize the time, and Matt has to take off pretty soon. So we'll wrap up the hockey talk. We'll get his hot take, and then Aiden and I are going to talk basketball afterwards around the whole Masai situation. So let's talk Leafs really quickly. James Myrtle put in an article this week around where he thought Leafs players sort of stood in terms of who would be back next year. And there were some interesting decisions. If you want to read it, it's on The Athletic. You can just sort of look him up. Really the notable ones he had as potentially on the move were Andreas Johnsson, Kasperi Kapanen, and Jason Spezza. So Spezza is really the only notable name on that list for me. Personally, I think he'll likely be back because I think he's been a great locker room presence. Johnsson and Kapanen kind of figured because of their salaries, but who knows? Maybe they don't move. In terms of the ones that he thought it might be time to move on from, Frederik Andersen and Frederick Gauthier. Gauthier is obviously going in to be an RFA. So that might just be his time. And Anderson's a UFA next summer. So I don't know whether or not he goes. But again, it's just something we're sort of uncertain about. And then, as he called it, the beats the hell out of me division. He had Kerfoot, Liljegren, Nick Patin, Dennis Malgin, and Callie Rosen. So maybe we see Timothy Liljegren going in some sort of package if the Leafs are sort of done with him. But I think that was really interesting to have him on this list. What do you sort of think about these few players being in these groups? Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? Where do you sort of stand on it all?
Oh man, the amount of groups he has is super overwhelming to me. I didn't think we needed that many groups. To me, I mean, I think he has the untouchables pretty well in place. I don't know if I'd put Marner there. I'd put Marner in the highly unlikely to leave division personally. Tavares, Matthews are untouchable. And then, I mean, I think one of either Johnsson or Kapanen has to go. They're very similar players, and to me, it's Johnsson. You clear up that $3.4 million cap hit. I mean, Kapanen kills penalties, right? Mm-hmm. You touched on Spezza. I think he's a great guy to bring back. He brought a lot to the team. I'm pretty sure. I don't want to, confirm. I'm pretty sure he had as many goals as Jeff Skinner did for Buffalo this year on a league minimum contract. So, I mean, that says a ton to me about how valuable he was at $700,000. You get the same production as a $9 million player. So, and then
on the fourth line.
Yeah, exactly. And then Frederik Andersen, I think you keep him around. Personally, I don't think you can move on from him. I think he means too much to the team, and he's definitely not an issue in my eyes. I don't think, the Leafs were eliminated because of Frederik Andersen this season. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's also the So Long Farewell division, which I thought was a pretty good name.
Yeah.
Tyson Barrie, Cody Ceci, Kyle Clifford, and Casimir Kaskisuo.
Mm-hmm.
And David Clarkson, but I don't even know why he included
David Clarkson.
I don't know why he included him on that list. If you're including David Clarkson, you should be including Nathan Horton too. But Interesting that he thinks Casimir Cascasuel is going to go. Interesting that Kapanen and Janssen are potentially in the move, and he's not really sure about Kerfoot. But overall, I think I'm comfortable with losing any of the players that might go, personally. Aiden, what do you think?
I think I agree with Matt. I think if it was between Janssen or Kapanen, it's got to be Janssen just because Kapanen does kill the penalties. And I think Janssen is making a little bit more than Kapanen as well. And for longer term, I'm pretty sure as well. But do I think that they should trade, one of the big four guys like Nylander or Marner? Like, I think they need to consider it. But yeah, the untouchables with Matthews and Tavares, I don't think they're going. As for Frederik Andersen, I think we discussed it a little bit last week. Like, if there's a trade there, like the Leafs should maybe look at it. Just getting a guy who's more younger and has a bit more maybe term on his contract. But I also agree that like Andersen was definitely not the problem, and they didn't get eliminated because of him. And he's been their MVP basically since he's gotten here. They would have not made the playoffs that first year. They might not have even made the playoffs this year if not for Frederik Andersen. So he's been a stud goalie on a team that has zero defense. So I think they need to bring in defense to help him out. Barry gone, CC gone. Got to find replacements for those guys. And I think Spezza will be back.
All right. And Matt, I asked Aiden this last week, and I also asked Kennedy. And if you haven't checked out that episode, go back and listen to it. But who do you think the Leafs should bring in this offseason?
Man, before this series, I was of the belief that this was the way this team is built, is a contending style of hockey. You look at, the way it's built, it's fast, it's skilled, it's offensive. You bring in Tyson Barrie, you're adding more offense to your, already extremely strong offense. You can move the puck out of the zone. Everyone thought that was a knockout, pickup, trading Kadri for Tyson Barrie, Alex Kerfoot. You're faster, you expect to score more goals. However, the issue with this team has never been scoring goals. It hasn't been since Matthews, Marner, Nylander came in. Now you add Tavares. Their depth is designed for offense, right? So now the issue you have to look at is when you run into a team like Columbus in the playoffs and your offense, your big four players can't produce anything. We know who they are. How do you expect your depth forwards that are, that play the same style of hockey and that aren't as skilled? How do you expect them to break through when your big guys can't do it? So for me, I'm of the belief that there needs to be a little bit of a change in philosophy. I know it's only been 1 or 2 seasons playing the way and, having this team, this roster constructed the way it has been. But I think, saying a player like Mitch Marner is untouchable, I'm not suggesting you trade him, but I think that's insane to suggest a player like him is untouchable. You have an almost $11 million cap hit. If you can move a player like Marner and bring in a free agent like Pietrangelo and then have cap room left over to address your depth or defense maybe somewhere else, I think that's, a move that you have to look at. And like I said, I'm not suggesting you explore that. But when a move like that comes along, if you can trade Nylander, free up cap space, if you can trade Janssen, any of those depth guys, right? It's not like the Leafs are lacking offense. They have it. Matthews, Tavares, they have the offense on defense with Riley, right? They didn't need to bring in Barrie to quarterback a power play. They already had it. So for me, I think you need to bring in another guy outside of Jake Muzzin. You saw what happened when he went down, when he went injured. I think they need that kind of steady kind of veteran who's, still an extremely good hockey player in the NHL, like a Pietrangelo. I don't think, you need to look on forward for a change. I think their forwards are fine in terms of their top 6, top 9. Maybe move around some depth players on the fourth line. But for me, it's a player like Pietrangelo you look to target.
Yeah. Also, you got to keep in mind that they're going to bring in Nick Robertson to start the season, and also Alex Barabanov, who they signed from Russia as well. So They definitely don't need to go out and get any more forwards this offseason. If they lose any, then I'm comfortable with that because they have the depth there. Also, I know people don't really like him, but if it comes to it, like you got Jeremy Bracco as well, who could probably be something at least. And then, yeah, it's just the defense. Address the defense. Get a guy who can play alongside of Riley and get a guy who can play alongside of Muzzin.
Yeah, they need someone on the right side. And Bracco's actually about to be an RFA. So we'll see whether or not they actually keep him, because I think that is actually a possibility that they won't. But we'll see. Finally, with Matt, before we do the Raptor stuff and we let him go, Bruce Boudreau, we mentioned him last week, at least I did, that I sort of hoped that he would be an assistant coach for the Leafs. And apparently there's actually some stuff to that. It came out, I believe it was last night with Myrtle. Again, he's been very good the last couple of days, that Boudreau would actually be very interested in the job if he can't get a head coaching gig, with when you have guys with like Mike Babcock and Gerard Gallant and Peter Laviolette, I believe, is still all of them are unemployed. I think there's a serious chance that you might be able to bring in Bruce Boudreau to fill that role of Paul McFarland. And I'd love that. I want to know what you guys think about that before we get Matt's hot take. So what are your thoughts on Bruce Boudreau joining the Toronto Maple Leafs?
You go, Matt.
Oh, I like it. I mean, Boudreau's an established NHL coach. He's done fantastic in his past with Washington, I think coming first in their division 4 times, and then Anaheim coming first in the division 4 or 5 times. Yeah, he's established. I mistook him for being a defensive coach earlier, but he's definitely an offensive coach. And with a team that's built the way Toronto is right now, I think that could help them out like exponentially.
I think for me, it's just experience, and he's been around the league for so long. He's been in the Eastern Conference, the Western Conference. He's going to bring in a lot of new things to the Leafs, I would say, and hopefully makes them better. I know he's also a bit of a tougher coach, more vocal. So that's also something the Leafs probably will need, a guy who can motivate them or get mad at them as well. Like I know Boudreau is known for that. So, and also like he is from Toronto. He wanted to coach here. So, I mean, I think it's a perfect fit. They just got to make it happen now.
Yeah. They did ask Minnesota for permission to speak to him, but they haven't had an interview yet. So there's still a lot of dominoes that need to fall in order for him to join Toronto. But I'd love it personally. Yeah, I guess we take Matt out. You have been a fantastic guest. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
What is your hot take for today?
I mean, I guess it's not a super hot take now. But I'm going to say go against my bracket, say Colorado wins the cup and Nazem Kadri wins the Conn Smythe.
Wow. That is that Kadri takes a hot take.
The Kadri thing is the hot take.
That's the hot take. I think Nazem Kadri is going to have a monster playoff. They're going to go all the way, and he's going to, he's going to do it.
Suck.
No, you know what? Like he's the kind of player the Leafs need so bad, and like with the benefit of hindsight now, you can look at that trade and say, hey, that's a terrible trade. But at the time, including myself, I thought everyone thought that was a home run trade for the Leafs. They get their right shot defenseman. They get a replacement forward in Kerfoot, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I want that for Kadri so bad. I think he deserves it.
He does.
He does. He's been through a lot. But yeah, thank you for joining us, Matt. Thanks, Matt. Really appreciate it. We will link all of your stuff down below, whether it be the 5-year collective.
Year 5 collective.
Year 5. Oh, why did I say 5-year? The Year 5 collective KMN show, even though you're not really doing stuff with them right now.
Yep.
I don't believe you have a Twitter, so we won't link that. But we will link your. You do have Twitter?
Oh yeah. Okay. Somewhere. I don't know.
Twitter, Instagram.
We'll link everything down below.
Go for it. Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for joining us. Good luck this semester, and we'll talk to you later.
Yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for having me.
And obviously, Matt just left. He had to go and do some stuff, which we just didn't. Yeah, he's playing golf. So hopefully he does well playing the Scottish sport. But yeah, we forgot to hit. I can't believe I forgot to hit this. We forgot to talk Raptors and the NBA and everything that's happening around that situation. So why don't we start with? Let's start with game one. We're not going to talk about game two because I forgot to make notes for that. Although I might talk about it a little bit. But game one, Fred VanVleet went off. I don't know if you watched that game, but he was on fire. He didn't miss. I was really impressed with him. Kyle Lowry actually scored points in the first game of the playoffs, which is a miracle. And apart from the third quarter, they were just dominant. There was absolutely no competition there.
Didn't they get like a record for the most 3-pointers in a game or something like that?
I think
Raptors franchise history.
I think Fred might have done that.
Okay.
Tied or beaten the record for a player. But either way, they were insane. They were incredible. I was very impressed with them. Obviously, game two wasn't as good. You know, it was a lot closer. They only won by 5, and they were down for 95% of that game. Game three will probably be a little bit easier because Joe Harris had to leave the bubble for a personal matter, and he won't be eligible to return until at least game 6 or 7. I can't remember which it is. So that's a big loss for them. They're going to really miss him and his 3-point shooting. So if they were already in trouble, they're in even more trouble now. So I'd expect this to be a sweep, honestly. But do you have any sort of thoughts on the Raps?
Yeah, I think, they've looked really well so far. Game 2, they got down. I think at the half they were losing as well, but they were able to bounce back and win a gritty game. Came down to the wire, but they hung in there. And you're going to need to win those games, even against a team like Brooklyn. If you go down, there's no guarantee that you're going to come back. But the Raptors were able to persevere through that. So I think that really says a lot about the Raptors' character. I think they're just determined. They look really determined to prove people wrong. I think VanVleet said it best. It's going to be really hard to beat us 4 times. So, and I really do believe that as well. I don't know if it's going to be a sweep. I think it's still, a bit too early to say that. It was a close game too. So, and I know that, Harris is out for the next couple of games, but hopefully the Raptors don't take a step back because of that. And hopefully they don't underestimate the Nets as much, because the Nets are now under pressure and they know that their season is, in jeopardy. They're going to come out playing really well in games 3 and 4 for sure to tie up the series. So the Raptors got to be ready. And yeah, hopefully they do sweep it.
Yeah, they've been looked pretty good this series, apart from Ibaka and Gasol, who kind of struggled against Jared Allen yesterday or in game 2. I thought they looked good. I haven't seen any issues. Norm played well yesterday. Fred's been good. Kyle's been good. Pascal's been good. I've liked the Raptors. I think they have a serious shot to repeat. And with what happened with Milwaukee in game 1, having lost that, as well as the Lakers dropping game 1 to the Portland Trail Blazers, I think the Raptors have a serious shot, even though Orlando, who are playing the Bucks, Aaron Gordon and I can't remember the other player, are both missing today's game.
I think Porzingis out?
He's on Dallas.
Isn't he? Oh, he's on Dallas? Oh,
he's
yeah.
In Dallas,
Sorry. Yeah. I'm thinking of something else.
You're thinking of Aaron Gordon. I'd assume.
Okay.
He's their big star. Aaron Gordon's out, and Michael Carter-Williams is also out. So they will miss game 2, which is a big blow to Orlando and probably guarantees a win for Milwaukee. But Boston, Philly, good series. Philly's terrible. Boston are okay. There's not really much NBA news apart from the Masai situation, which we need to get into because, wow. It is something. I'm going to struggle to find the words to quite voice how I feel about this police officer, if I can even call him that, Alan Strickland. If you're not familiar with the situation and if you haven't seen the videos, basically Masai Ujiri, after the Raptors won Game 6 in Golden State, he's going down to the court to celebrate with the team, get the trophy, all of that. And as he was trying to enter the court, a police officer, in this case Alan Strickland, got in a confrontation with Masai. And there were allegations thrown either way. The police officer was accusing Masai of being aggressive and trying to push this confrontation. But ultimately, this new video proves otherwise. The body cam footage, as well as a brand new angle, were released to the public following Masai Ujiri filing a counter lawsuit against the police officer for filing his lawsuit. And it basically just proves Masai is completely innocent. He walks up, and as he's trying to get his press passes out, the officer pushes him once, and then as he's showing him his press passes walking towards him, he just pushes him again for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
And then Masai comes back and is like, you know who I am, I'm the president of the Raptors, and gives him a very small push, which, considering what the police officer did, was absolutely nothing. But you can watch the video if you want to see whether or not I understand it as you do. It was such a bad move by the Strickland. It was just despicable. And then the police force backed him up again yesterday after the videos had come out and he'd been shown doing this stuff. It's just so bad. And now this guy has also been charged with insurance fraud in the past. And he's currently on sick leave because he's claiming he's hurt, which just isn't the case at all. And it's just infuriating, and the court system will hopefully take care of him. And if it doesn't, there are some serious, serious issues in the United States that really need to be addressed. What do you think of this situation quickly before our meeting ends?
Yeah, no, I was so happy that footage actually came out, and Masai was definitely not in the wrong. And like I couldn't believe what the officer did. Like, what's the need to do that? Like, you push him for no reason at the start, and then he's pulling out his credentials. Like, why push anyone in general? Like, I know your job as a security guard is to protect people, but like, don't push anyone like that, especially if you don't. First of all, he should probably know who he is. He knows, that's Masai Ujiri. He's obviously going to come onto the court at the end of the game. He's the president of the Raptors. The fact that Masai had to say that he's the president is just stupid. Like, people know who he is. And, I think, Leo Routens, he said something on TSN about it. And he was saying that when he went onto the court after the game, he wasn't even asked for credentials. He just went on past the security. And he was saying that it's just because he's a white man and Masai is a black man. And that is what, has to change. That is why we kneel, he was saying, because we want to change this injustice. And I would have to agree with that. It's really unfortunate, but it's just some officers, some people out there just do that stuff, and it's disgusting, to be honest. And I think MLSC said that they're going to do whatever they can to support Masai throughout this. So I'm glad that them and the Raptors are standing by them and taking this seriously. And it's just wrong. It's just wrong of the officer to do that, and he should be, in a lot of trouble for what he did. And I'm glad that finally there's some light that has been shed on this situation, because we've been wanting answers, I guess, for the past year.
Yeah, it's just shameful that it's taken a year for this footage to come out. And it's just embarrassing for the police force and for that guy. It's just wrong. And, imagine if this wasn't the president of the Toronto Raptors. Imagine if this was just some guy who from your neighborhood who didn't have the money to fight this. Like, this situation would go completely different.
This happens all the time. Like, not just security guard. Like, this happens in the streets. This happens all over the world. So
this guy was
much bigger than this.
This guy was a full-on police officer too. Like, I think he was like some sort of version of lieutenant, which is pretty big in the police. And it's just shameful. It's shameful that this happened. It's shameful that it got this far without the truth coming out. It's shameful that the police force is protecting this guy.
Mm-hmm.
They're not holding him accountable for lying through his teeth. Just despicable.
Mind-blowing. Yeah.
Despicable. So on that sort of depressing note, let's wrap and give our hot takes. Do you have one prepared?
Yes. Yeah, I thought of one earlier in the show. I forget. Hold on. Oh yeah. I'm doing a soccer one. Soccer hot take. I'm going to say Bayern wins the Champions League final and Alphonso Davies scores the game-winning goal in extra time.
You do realize he's a defender, right?
That's why it's a hot take. And no, I did not realize that, but that is why it's a hot take.
That is, the first part of Bayern winning is not that hot of a take because I have them winning the entire tournament. I've had them winning the entire tournament since they played Barcelona and destroyed them 8-2.
Okay.
But
yeah, the Davies part then.
Davies scoring goal, that would be a very, very hot take because he scored
the winning goal in extra time.
Yeah, that might be your hottest take yet, and probably going to be your most incorrect.
And I don't even know if it's hot. Like, I just said it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know.
All right. I'll wrap with my hot take, which I haven't come up with. I'm going to say Toronto Raptors go back-to-back. This isn't the hot part, though. The hot part is the Lakers go out in the first round. I think Portland takes them out in the first round. So, with that, thank you for listening. Thank you, Matt, for joining us on today's show. We really, really appreciate it. Truly, we will link all of his stuff down below, everything there. Thank you for listening. We will see you next week. And go TFC because they're playing Friday night.
Go Habs. Let's hope they come back against Philly.
Boo Habs. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week. Peace.